Time for a special edition of NFL Betting Blitz. That's normally the show where Erik and I go through all of our NFL plays and our best bets, but it's not football season right now. But Erik, the NFL has done a fantastic job of really making it a year-round business, because the offseason sometimes is just as intriguing as when the season starts, when you have free agency, you have the draft, and rule changes and all sorts of things happening. Right now, we're in a fun week with the draft coming up. You and I are recording on Wednesday afternoon, and you're actually going to be heading out to the draft live to do some coverage out there.
Correct. I leave early tomorrow morning. I'll be there all 3 days. If you guys see me out there and about, stop by, say hi. I'll share a overpriced adult beverage with you. So yeah.
What you and I will do is we'll go through the start of the draft. We'll go through the top 10 picks projected for round one, what you think these teams will do. And then we'll talk about a couple teams that just overall could have a good draft. Maybe they have a lot of picks, or maybe they have some high picks and make some movement. Teams that you're looking for a good draft to come through. So for some people who maybe haven't been following along or doing all the prep work and the research leading in, this is, at least on paper right now, where we sit 24 hours out, it seems like we're going to have a lot of the big name skill players drafted early. And there's kind of becoming that quarterback panic where there are going to be a few quarterbacks drafted early. How many do you think are going to go right off the bat?
I think the first three picks will be quarterbacks.
So we'll start with one with the Bears. You think obviously they're going Caleb? That's been pretty sure for a while.
I mean, it's pretty sure that they've been going Caleb.
So for the Bears, what's nice is that where they sit also, they've got pick 1 and they've got pick 9. So if you're able to get someone like Caleb, is there a world where we see the Bears? I guess we could talk about their 2 picks here in the top 10. Is there a world where we could see the Bears coming out of this with Caleb and then maybe trying to trade up to get one of the really good wide receivers?
I really think what's more realistic for the Bears is if Romoduza, the wide receiver from Washington, if he's off the board at 9, but he could be there on the board. But if he's off the board at 9, they're actually going to look to trade back, because the difference between the top 3 edge rushers and the top 2 defensive linemen, it's very slim. So if you're able to trade back, acquire a couple assets for later in the draft to help your interior defensive line, interior offensive line, which they need, I think that's what they're going to do. So I think that's a team we could kind of move back, that we don't expect to move back, that we think is going to take a wide receiver. I know Keenan Allen is a little bit older. He only has 1 year left. He's over 30. So I think this is just a 1-year thing to give Caleb Williams the best opportunity to be successful. So if Rome is there, I think he goes there. But if not, I think the Bears move back and take one of those defensive players, or maybe even a Brian Thomas Jr., the other wide receiver from LSU. So I think that's one of the big pieces. I really feel like this draft is going to break with what the Cardinals and what the Giants do. They're the 2 teams that kind of hold the key to what these other teams do.
So 2-3, we're looking at Drake May, McDaniels. Daniels, do you think there's for sure which one's going to which right now? And is that what you think as far as 2-3, those next 2 quarterbacks?
It's always hard when you do these drafts, because you have to set aside what you would do and what a GM is going to do.
Yeah.
What I would do was I would draft Drake May. But I think what the Commanders are going to do, bringing in Cliff Kingsbury, whose offense is very like what they did at LSU. I think they're going to draft Jaden Daniels here. I think they're going to go after Jaden Daniels. I think they're going to get him. I think his mobility is going to be a key, because it's going to be able to band-aid the holes the Commanders have on the offensive line. Plus, let's face it, Drake May, he needs a little seasoning. He was good 2 years ago, took a step back this year with the coaching changes, with Phil Luongo not being there as an offensive coordinator for the Tar Heels. Took a step back this year. I think Drake May needs a little bit of seasoning, not ready to be thrown in the fire right away. Because of that, I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels that is picked 2 with the Washington Commanders.
And then that would leave Drake May to the Patriots at 3.
What I think is going to happen here is I think the Minnesota Vikings are actually going to trade up to this pick. We need to remember They brought in Sam Darnold, who can be that bridge gap quarterback. They can start with Donald, then come week, 8, 9, whenever their bye falls, then you can put Drake May into the situation. I think Drake May just has a lot bigger upside. He's being compared to Justin Herbert. He has the mobility, has the arm strength. I know people are making a thing about playing against the ACC defenses, but when you just kind of look at what he does, footwork, arm strength, ability to read coverage, I think he's going to be the quarterback in 5 years that's going to be the it guy, the guy that we're like, oh, wow, this is the guy you should have took first. Patriots have a lot of holes, offensive line, defensive line. This isn't the same Patriots team that we've been accustomed to. The wide receiver
They're not just missing a quarterback. They need a lot of help.
I think because of that, the Patriots are going to move down. I think Minnesota's been very vocal about moving up. I think Minnesota moves up. I think they draft Drake May.
Do you think they will do that with either guy? Or do you think they have a preference of quarterback? Like they want, if Daniels is there, they'll take him. But if it's May, then maybe they just trade down because they don't like him as much. Or do you think it matters?
I don't think it matters. I think this is more Minnesota saying, hey, we need a quarterback.
We need the guy.
The Patriots saying, hey, you know what? We have so many holes. They have 2 first-round picks. They'll probably be sending both first-round picks in order to pull off this trade. Because of that, I think they're going to be able to get Drake May and then the Vikings, and then this is going to set the Patriots up to have 2 first-round picks. And then, heck, even with the 2 first-round picks, this is a team that could potentially move back in to get an offensive line and get someone in the defensive line front. I had another secondary to go along with Christian Gonzalez. So I think with how many holes that they have, the Patriots are going to trade back with the Vikings. The Vikings trade up to get Drake May.
And that's where things get funny, because if we get quarterbacks 1, 2, and 3, then you get a situation where any other teams that might need a quarterback, they could start getting nervous. And that's when they go overspend for a guy like McCarthy, who, how early do you want to draft the 4th or the 5th best quarterback in this draft, right? You don't, and if you're someone that's late in the draft or do you want to give up a bunch of stuff to go get the 4th or 5th best quarterback here? Or do you just say, you know what, the value doesn't match what the return on our investment could be. We don't want to go give up a couple picks for someone who might just be okay. Right? I mean, after these top 3, is for you when you're doing your analysis and watching, is it the top 3 quarterbacks and then a big gap to JJ and who's next?
I think there's a huge gap. The thing we need to ask ourselves is, if there wasn't this big push by Harbaugh with his JJ McCarthy narrative, would he be this high on draft boards? I personally don't think so. When you just look at the tape, just look at what he can do. He can't throw to the left side of the field. His completion percentage was in the low 50s, throwing to the left side of the field. He can only throw to the right side of the field. Did he do great in college? Did he win a ton? Did he win a ton in high school? Yes. But this is the NFL level. And if you're a GM and you trade up and a quarterback doesn't do well, you're done. And you may not even get another job. I feel with him, there's a lot of little red flags out there that I don't think teams are going to trade up. And my final mock draft, which I did, which is up on my website, I actually did have a team draft up to take them in a couple picks. We'll get to a little bit later. But I don't think you can do that. And I think if you do that, I think that you're going to set your franchise up. I know you want to get the quarterback on the rookie scale, but the Browns went out there. The Browns showed us, hey, you build in the trenches and you have a serviceable quarterback with a good run game, you can make the playoffs. So
you just gotta be ready to build. That's how you have to be a good organization, right? You come in with a plan and say, okay, we're going to try to get a quarterback here, or hey, we need a wide receiver, or we need 2 spots on the defense. But if those are taken, you have to be ready to call an audible and to shift a little bit to what your needs are or how you're going to build your team. Hey, you know what? That doesn't work. We can't just try to put a square peg in a round hole. We have to go get the best player available. And I can't be an old school coach who only does it this way, right? I have to be a little bit able to be malleable. And okay, these are the players. Let's put our players in the best spot to succeed. Sometimes you can do one, but you have to be capable of doing both as a GM or as a head coach, right?
You have to be able to adjust on the fly. Last year, I really feel what happened with a lot of these teams is no one saw that trade up for Willie Anderson happening. Nobody saw it happening. And then teams started to panic. And because of that, we saw some trades and some stuff happen. I really feel if Gonzalez was still on the board when the Lions picked, Lions would have took him. Or Witherspoon, whoever was the guy that Seattle drafted. I may be wrong, but one of the cornerback that Seattle drafted, I think the Lions were going to draft him if he was still on the board. But that move to go up for the Texans and have the top 2 picks and draft Willie Anderson threw the draft completely on heels last year. And it wouldn't surprise me if something like that happens this year.
So we're up to, in the 4 or 5 spot now. This is where things will start to change. So 5.
I really feel these 3 picks here, because when you kind of look at everyone's kind of projections and everything, they have the Titans taking Joel out, the offensive lineman from the Irish, and their offensive line is putrid. They need to protect Will Levis. So I think they're pretty set staying there. But we have the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they lost Hollywood Brown. They really don't have a true number 1 wide receiver. What are they going to do? Are they going to draft Marvin Harrison, or is this going to be a situation where a team like whoever, like the Broncos maybe, or if the Patriots don't make the trade, the Vikings move up to draft a quarterback, and they move down, and then they move back into the back end of the top 10 to draft Romoduza,
one of the wide receivers.
One of the wide receivers.
Neighbors.
This is a team like Cardinals. Cardinals are an interesting team. Cardinals have the potential to have a very good draft here. They're kind of the position where they're like, hey, you know what? If we think Marvin Harrison is going to be that, we can take him.
And he may be the best player off the board, right? Like he's been for years. He's been since they said that. I mean, for years we've been hearing about him as the best wide receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson. And then the teams in front of him, they just need quarterbacks. He very easily could be the best player in this draft, and he could be someone right away that could jump in and help you.
Jump in, be the clear number 1. You give Kyler Murray the weapon. You also have McBride there. Very interesting. Or you could look to move. You got Paris Johnson last year. Cardinals are a really interesting team, and they're doing a lot of good stuff with kind of being under the radar.
Yeah.
No one's really talking about them because they did get some picks from the Texans with that trade last year. Also, you look at it, does a team trade up? I'm pretty adamant here with my thinking that you should not be taking JJ McCarthy with a top 5 pick.
Completely agree.
When the list came out about who's going to be attending, you think if you're going to be a top 5 pick, you're going to be in attendance, especially with it being in Detroit, Michigan, and you playing at Ann Arbor. He's not going to be there. So that kind of tells to me that he kind of knows, and these guys, they have an idea where they're going to go, that he knows he's not going to be taken within one of these top picks. Maybe it's just me overreading the room, but I really feel that the Cards have their choice here. You can trade back, you can take Harrison. Look, I think you got to take Harrison here. I mean, I think it's it's a no-brainer in my eyes. You got to take Marvin Harrison here. And then we get to the Chargers.
Things are going to be new for them, right?
Yeah,
because it's brand new.
It's kind of crazy to me. There's Harbaugh's been on this JJ McCarthy thing. There's this crazy rumor that he's going to look to trade Herbert and bring in JJ McCarthy, which I think would be idiotic.
Absurd.
If you did
Absurd.
That. This is another, but they've been saying, hey, you know what? We need offensive linemen. We're going to run the ball. But when you look at their offensive line, when it stayed healthy, and you can use that term,
it was okay.
When it stayed healthy, it was really good. So I just don't think that they're going to take an offensive lineman.
Wide receiver.
I think they're in a position to move back. It wouldn't surprise me if a team moved up. Like
a team that wanted one of those receivers or a QB.
Some people think Neighbors is just as good as Harrison, if not better. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't surprise me if a team moved up. But at the end of the day, I think Harbaugh deep down knows, hey, you have to be able to throw the ball here. We lost not just Keenan Allen, but we lost Michael Williams as well. We lost our top two wide receivers. We drafted Quentin Johnson early. We reached for him last year.
He
He's a
was
body
not good.
catcher, doesn't use
Yeah.
his hands. We need to get a clear number one. I think they need to take. I think for them, taking Neighbors is a clear cut thing. And sometimes you have to do that when you do these mock drafts. A case in point, a team like the Saints. You look at the Saints, they literally have no offensive tackles on their roster right now. Literally, they have zero. So I really feel like that's kind of a tell what they're going to do. And when you look at this Chargers roster, them having no wide receivers is a tell that they're going to be drafting a wide receiver. I think it's a no-brainer. I think they take Neighbors.
We move to the Giants. So coming off a really bad year, is this one of these teams that I've heard, do they try to reach for a quarterback, or do they do something where they move up a spot or two to grab a McCarthy, which that to me would be just like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, where it's like you paid a guy, Jones, who had a good year, but then you, unfortunately, what happens, you have to overpay that guy who you never even know if he's going to get back to the success he had the really good year a few years ago. So you already had to pay him a bunch. He got hurt last year. And now if you go draft a quarterback and you're drafting, the fourth quarterback in this draft, which is going to be McCarthy or someone below him, Bo Nix, someone like that, I don't know if that's what you want to do. If I were them, I'm trying to just take some of the best available, but I've been hearing weird rumors. What do you think they're going to do?
They can do three things here. They can draft JJ McCarthy, which I do not think they're going to do because they just signed Daniel Jones to that big contract. So I think they're kind of locked into Daniel Jones right now and need to give him the best chance to be successful. So with that being said, you look at the Giants, they need offensive line help. They literally just spent 2 picks in a row on an offensive line. I don't think a GM is going to, you know what I mean? A GM is going to pick 3 tackles in top 10 picks.
No.
Oh, sorry, 3 years in a row. I just don't see that happening. So then that leaves the wide receiver position. Last night on my show, we did a mock draft, and my guest Sterling from Silver Star Sports, him and I just went back and forth. I had the odd ones, he had the even ones. It was just like, what were things going to happen? He had them draft Rome here from Washington. What I think is a real possibility, because when you look at the Giants, they need wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, cornerbacks, linebackers. Hell, you probably need a tight end because Waller can't stay on it. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a team like the Broncos with that new ownership panic and the Broncos trade up here to draft a quarterback because they literally have Jared Stidham right now. So I think the Broncos are going to be a team that we look to trade up here, and they're going to take JJ McCarthy.
So it sounds like you think the certain players will probably go top 6, but we're not exactly sure which teams as much, right? Like, because it seems like you think 3 quarterbacks, 3 receivers, probably.
Well, it kind of depends. Like if the Giants stay, I think they take a wide receiver.
They take a receiver, but yeah. So like it seemed like that's not kind of. It seems like it's more safe that those players probably go in those spots, and we have teams like you're saying that maybe need another receiver move up after Harrison's gone, and then somebody goes, let's make sure we get one of these next guys, because I'm thinking a lot of people probably have them ranked in the tiers. It's kind of like what we're talking about, right? Like the 3 quarterbacks, maybe, hey, I want to get one of those 3. If it's not one of them, then maybe let's wait. And then you might get 1 or 2 teams that get nervous and go, let's go get McCarthy. Same thing with the wide receivers. It feels like is it those 3 that are kind of in a tier above everybody else?
Yeah, those 3 are above.
Like Harrison, Neighbors, and Adonze?
Yeah, and then right below that, you have the kid Mitchell from the Texas. He's got some off the field stuff that's kind of worrying some people. You got Thomas Jr. from LSU. He's right there too, and you got Ladd Mikulski from Georgia. Those guys are probably going to be the ones that I think are going to be drafted in the first round. But there is definitely a little bit of a drop off. The one that I'm kind of interested in at the NFL level is I'm kind of interested in Brian Thomas Jr. He was the running rate to Neighbors. I think in the right system, I think he could kind of thrive. A team off the beaten path, I think he's kind of live for is the Jacksonville Jaguars because can a playoff team really be a playoff team if Christian Kirk's your number one wide receiver option? I don't think it can. I think they need to add a little bit to the wide receiver room. That'd be something I'd look to do. In terms of this pick here, I think the Giants take a wide receiver, or I think they trade out, get a couple more assets because of how much they need, and the Broncos trade up to take McCarthy.
And we pointed out a little earlier, Titans feel like they're going to get an offensive lineman here.
Mm-hmm.
It's
just how it breaks down. I mean, a lot of people have Joe All on top. I have Joe All on top. I think they're going to go with him. Their offensive line was putrid last year. You don't have Derrick Henry. You need to be able to protect Levis.
Young quarterback now. They like Levis, it seems like, right? So you got to give him an opportunity, build in front of him, give the guy some time to throw. For Atlanta, it's been what I've been reading and hearing is if they stay here, make the pick, probably defense, probably like a cornerback.
Well, no, I mean, I think if they stay here, I think they're going to go Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Atlanta.
Sure.
Pair him. They have had a little hard time getting the quarterback here. But this is another pick. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if a team like the Saints traded up to the 8th pick because Atlanta's pretty well set. If Atlanta can trade back, pick up a couple more draft picks, and kind of build and not try to get starters, but try to get those second tier guys, the backups later in the draft, because they're set everywhere else.
Yeah,
that's a great strategy.
Their roster was pretty good last year, right? They have offensively, they have top tier talent on the offensive side. Their offensive line has been really solid. They can run the ball well. And then defensively, they put a lot into their defense last year too, right?
Yeah.
Like as far as the big starters and some kind of splashy defensive moves. So you're right. For them, instead of necessarily going out and getting one of these top tier, heck, it'd be nice if you could build up a little more depth, right? Get a couple picks here or a pick here, a pick next year, just sort of put your franchise in a better spot to succeed overall than going and making another flashy pick where maybe this one pick doesn't hit, but then all of a sudden you turn this one pick into 2 or 3 and you just have a better opportunity of those being a little bit more useful for your team right now.
Yeah. So look, they could trade here. I really feel they do trade back because when you look at the defensive line and the edge rushers, there's not a big difference. The top 2 defensive linemen, Brian Murphy from Texas, Newton from Illinois. When you look at the top pass rushers, you got Dallas Turner from Alabama, you got Latsu from UCLA, and you got Brees from Florida State. There's really not that big of a difference. It's kind of like which one do you want to get? Who's ever on the top of your board? With them kind of having the pick, I kind of feel that they could easily move back to 14. Oh, no, sorry. Move back, like maybe the Raiders trade up. Maybe the Giants trade up. A team like that. They're not going to trade with the Saints, obviously, because the Saints are within the same division. And I think the Saints maybe the Saints trade up to 9 with the Bears just because they need that offensive lineman. And it's kind of starting to come out that if Pace could trade back. Pace kind of said he's open for business with the 9 pick without saying he's open for business with the 9 pick. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Bears are a team that looks to trade back. And then they trade back with the Saints, and the Saints come up and get whoever they have as their second best offensive lineman. Jets are kind of getting a lot of steam trying to draft in Brock Bowers, which to me, it doesn't make sense. I know they improved their offensive line, signing like some older tackles. But look, you have a 40-year-old quarterback
so bad
coming off a major injury. Interesting. You could take the kid from Penn State, Veshua, but he can only really play a tackle position. You look at the kid from Washington, whose name Fatua. He can play guard. He can play both tackle positions. A little bit more versatile. Maybe they go there. Or there's Fanuga from Oregon State, who's in the same position. I think they're going to look to get Fanuga. Actually, you can get him at 8-1 still on FanDuel to be the 10th pick. he's my second offensive lineman on my board. He's a little bit more versatile. And when sometimes you just need to say stuff out loud, you have a 40-year-old quarterback coming off a major injury. You need to protect him. You know what I mean? Like sometimes when you just say it that bluntly, it kind of makes sense to me. So I think the Jets, excuse me, would go here. So
and then the two teams behind them, just from they're kind of wild cards in this draft, right? The Vikings and the Broncos, because you've mentioned them a few times as teams that would not be a shock to see them trade up for a quarterback, for a wide receiver, for a skill position guy. They don't have very much talent at the skill positions, right?
And also we need to remember there's certain teams that just need talent and that are at the beginning of the draft, and certain teams that feel they need a quarterback. So those are the teams we could see trade up. Maybe even the Raiders we see trade up because they do really
they're right behind them too, right? Yeah, those three. Yeah.
And you Vikings, and you mentioned the quarterbacks. I really feel when you look at McCarthy, can't throw to the left side of the field. When you look at Bo Nix, he cannot sense pressure from the weak side for the life of him. And he can't really step into the pocket. That's something to be at the NFL level you need to do. Now, I absolutely love Penix, and the reason I like Penix a lot is it's hard to teach NFL quarterbacks to step up and throw with confidence down the field. Penix can do that all day. But the word with Penix is he's had like 3 major knee issues. And we've seen quarterbacks drop because of those knee issues. So that's kind of the word with Penix. Because of that, that's why I think those two may drop out of the first, and it wouldn't surprise me if no one trades up. We see JJ fall a little bit more. I really think that with the way that the teams kind of broke right here, like hypothetically with how we've laid it out, the team we need to kind of watch is the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals, if Brock Bowers is still on the board come pick 11, I guarantee that the Bengals are going to be calling to look to move up there to get that weapon. So now you have Bowers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, because he's going to be leaving soon. So your window is closing with them, and you get Brock Bowers. I mean, that's a team I want to be invested in. You know what I mean? Like, this is kind of like if Bowers is still on the board, we could kind of see a team move up a little bit. You know, you got Byron Murphy still on the board, who's an elite run stuffer. We could see people move up for him. And we haven't even got to the cornerbacks. There's been no cornerbacks off of it. So, I mean, there's a certain amount of teams that, you know, could do some things. It wouldn't surprise me. The Raiders, what do the Raiders do? The Raiders need a quarterback. They need a ton of help in the defensive position. Now, granted, they could draft Nix or Penix in the position they're at. I think they're going to go cornerback here.
So that's the top. Like the oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, I was going to say, like, that's the
you look at a team like the Colts. Irsay just came out and said he wants Marvin Harrison. I mean, like,
they move up,
and
right?
The Colts, do they move up? Because when you look at it, the Colts
young quarterback
need someone. The young quarterback, they have Michael Pittman. Do they look to do something there? They definitely. If I'm the Colts, though, I mean, how much money did you and I make during when we did the NFL show? Like saying, okay, we're attacking the Colts secondary again. You know what I mean? Like, I really feel
gotta get better there.
We need to address the secondary. What are your Rams going to do? Like with the position we're in now, and they're being like the pass rushers, Latua, Murphy, Newton, all those defensive fronts. You're in the post-Donald era. Now, look, I know they really don't. I know they've had the history of not drafting in the first round. Do you trade up to try to get Aaron Donald's replacement right now with those guys on the board? You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. The Steelers the rumor is the Steelers are going to give Fields his 5th-year extension. So, I mean, they're kind of saying Wilson's going to be the bridge gap quarterback. We're going to let Fields sit. Fields is going to be the guy moving forward after next year. Do the Steelers move up to take Troy Fontu, the offensive lineman from Washington, who's really versatile? I think there's a couple of guys I feel are going to be steals. One of them is this kid, Jackson Powers Johnson. He's from Oregon. He can play both interior guard positions and he can play the center position. I think he's either going to go to Dallas, who's very bad at the offensive line. You look at their offensive line now, it's just absolutely putrid. But it also wouldn't surprise me if my Lions traded up for him. We need to remember a couple years ago, and I'm spacing on the guy's name. They're a left tackle. He didn't allow a sack all year. He played at Cincinnati. The Eagles traded up to get him at the beginning of the second round because they knew that Kelsey was going to be retiring soon. Lions just lost Jonah Jackson, their left guard. They need to replace him. Frank Ragnow, their all-world center. He's getting up there in age. He's been banged up a lot. Do they look to trade up to take Jackson Powers Johnson to kind of like play the left guard and be the heir apparent to Frank Ragnow? And then we have the Cardinals who have the Texans pick. Do the Cardinals who have all these picks, do they say, okay, you know what? We're sitting at pick 27. We're going to look to trade up to try to get back into the mix or something. What do the Bills do? The Bills are in an interesting position. Do the Bills look to trade up because they obviously need Stephon Diggs replacement? I think for them, Mitchell, the kid from Texas, elite, clear-cut number one. Do they look to get him? But he's got some off-the-field stuff. Do you really want another headache with a Stephon Diggs as type player in the room? There's the Wilson, the linebacker from NC State. Do they look to make him and then try to get Mitchell at the beginning of the second round? Or it could be a team like the Seahawks. Seahawks had a couple of visits with Penix. Hypothetically, let's say a team like the Cardinals is sitting at 27 and Penix is still on the board. Do we see the Seahawks move up to be in the Cards position? The Panthers, I know, traded for Deontay Johnson. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Panthers trade up and look to add like a Troy Franklin, look to add someone like a Mitchell or a Brian Thomas Jr., the kid from LSU. I think the Panthers could trade up. And there's one big chip that I really think is going to fall over this weekend. I think Brendan Ayuk gets traded. So when you look at the big scheme of the NFL, if you put Ayuk on the team, would he be the number one wide receiver? I have about 5 to 7 teams where if you put Ayuk on the team, I think he'd be the number one wide receiver.
I agree.
Do we see the 49ers make a trade for Ayuk? I don't think you can get a first-round pick for Ayuk, but you're going to be able to get some third-round capital.
One of these teams that might need a wide receiver may not draft the wide receiver if they get Ayuk, right? Like one of those teams towards the top.
Hypothetically, let's say the Bills. Hypothetically, I think the Bills are a perfect team. Bills are sitting at 28. If Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Ladd, McCaskey from Georgia are still on the board, and the Bills don't take any of them, I think that's kind of a tell point that maybe there's a work for Ayuk on the board. Maybe they're working to get Ayuk there. That's just, it's just going to kind of be interesting to see. And then if they don't do that, and then the 49ers draft a wide receiver, that should just be red flags right there. Okay, you know what? Ayuk's going to get traded. Cowboys. What do the Cowboys do? Dak's contract is up. Could we see Jerry Jones?
Them trade up.
I'm going to draft. I'm going to draft Bo Nix. I'm going to take Penix.
One of the guys that's left.
Because when you look, they need a running back, wide receiver, quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker. They need so much, and it's just absurd. Another team, Bucks. Bucks are a team. Bucks have a lot of holes. They have Godwin. They just signed Evans. With it being such a wide receiver team, do they move Godwin in the draft? You know what I mean? There's a lot of little pieces that are going to be interesting to see, how it plays out. There's one thing I always look at is top 30 visits. Teams have to be vocal with the players that come for quote unquote top 30 visits. Your boy Rice from USC, Jerry's kid, he had 12 top 30 visits. Is Rice a kid that could sneak into the first round like the 49ers?
He's got pedigree. People probably trust with the family too, right? A guy who you feel like should just have a good head on his shoulders. If you and I are talking on Monday, give me 3 teams that you are going to tell me they had a good draft. They got a lot, or they got their guy, or I think they're going to be improved this year because of the draft. Give me 3 teams that are on your radar, whether it's a lot of picks, top picks, you just feel like they're going to hit their needs. Give them to me.
I think the Bears. I think the Bears are going to be able to say something because I think they're either going to get Rome from Washington, or I think they're going to trade back and then trade back, acquire some more picks. I think that the Bengals, I think the Bengals are either going to get a defensive lineman to replace DJ Reader, or they're going to trade up for Brock Bowers. So I think they're going to make some headway. And then I think the Commanders. I kind of feel like the Commanders, because you know what, you may not agree with what they're going to do, but they have the they have the second pick. So they're going to have their pick of their quarterback. So you can't really fault somebody for having the pick of their quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then we could see them, maybe making a move, maybe coming back into the into it. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if a team like Washington, Washington has the 23rd pick. Washington needs to require more assets. You know what I mean? Do they trade, or do they, like, hypothetically, with how my board is, the Patriots trade back, get 2 picks. They get the 11th pick from the Vikings, and they get the 23rd pick from the Vikings. Then the Commanders trade back up because the Commanders need offensive line help. The Commanders trade back up into the first round, and they get the kid Graham Burton from Duke, who can play, who's the same thing as Powers Johnson, that can play many positions.
And now you got your quarterback and your offensive lineman to protect him right there in the first round. And you feel like, hey, whether or not those guys hit, that's what this team needs. They need to go get their quarterback and know who it is. They need to go get some protection, and boom, if you can check off those boxes right away, you feel really good moving into the later rounds.
Yeah. And then there's little teams, like a team like the Eagles, with how many cornerbacks have been falling. I think they're in a position, and when you look at their history of drafting, they're going to draft the right guy. Everyone knows they're going to take a defensive guy here, probably a cornerback. They take Cooper DeJean, the guy from Iowa who had a major knee injury, whose pro day was off the chart. Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, who's a top DB, but he went from Toledo, so people are kind of questioning the top of the his talent, who he's gone against. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. An interesting name to watch is Chop Robinson, pass rusher from Penn State. Did someone trade up for him? But to answer your question, the Commanders, I think the Eagles, and I think the Bears, I think they're going to be the teams on Monday where we sit back and say, you know what, they really did a good job this draft.
Erik, man, incredible information as always. You are prepped. You are ready. You've done the homework. You've got some wagers locked in. Now you go have a nice time at the draft this weekend. Have fun. Safe travels over there. It'll be in a familiar place for you too, right over there in Detroit, right?
Yeah, right downtown Detroit. They said there's going to be 300,000 people in Detroit. So that's going to be a little interesting. Me and my claustrophobicness will be doing great there.
Yeah.
But, should be a good time. Like I said, if you guys see me there, come up. We can shoot the shit a little bit. I got to be filming some content stuff. So come say hi, and we'll have a beer.
Thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend. You and I will be back talking some more basketball next week when you come back. But we'll have some shows over the next few days for our NBA shows. We're just going to figure out exactly how we're going to do it. A couple of them might be just me. A couple of them might be you. We might have some fill-ins, but we will have our NBA shows with the promo code NFL Betting Blitz. If you want to go to Parlay Play, if you're looking for a great place to play props, parlayplay.io. Use our promo code NFL Betting Blitz. Thanks so much, Erik. Good luck to you this weekend. Enjoy the draft. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us here. And we'll be back with much more soon.